Hey all, so decided to do a bit of a stream because I keep getting asked about outposts and best crews for them. As you can see here, I'm just finishing up one of the 66 outposts, and you can see I've still got my Cosy nearly dead, my Cube almost nearly dead, and my Negro, which is dead. So I know a lot of people struggled a bit with these, and 66 is actually below my level of 68, and I normally shoot up, so I normally try and do up to 70 content, but that's absolutely impossible currently without a G6 Epic. So I would say probably par for the course at the moment with these crews. Well, not with these crews, with these ships. It's probably a 63 regular and a 60 elite. But you can see this one's just completing now. To be louder.
Needs to be a lot louder.
So this one's just completing now, and it looks like, yeah, just about completing it. And I've actually tweaked down this particular. Show you the buffs just before it ends. You see, I've got 500% acid defense. I'm not going all the way up to level 10. So I'm just going to try and turn the volume up maybe, because I'm a bit low. So you can do that. Microphone. A bit. Hopefully that's a little bit louder for people, although it's got it on there, so try that. That's probably better as well. I'm trying to go through my webcam. Let's see what I'm going through. Tech. What's that? Kim, can you just do another check for me to see if it sounds better now? Sorry, just I've not streamed for ages, so I've no idea how loud I'm sounding when I'm talking, so it looked like then that I was streaming via my webcam and not my microphone, which probably means it was going to be a bit low. So yeah, going through my headset, hopefully that sounds a bit better. Find out if it is, but yeah, so you can see here I've just completed a Outpost 66. Cosy just about survived, and the Cube just about survived, and the Negro died. Is that better?
Yeah, that's fine. It's not super loud, but it's fine.
Okay, cool, thanks. So we're just going to explore kind of the crews I set up, why I set them crews up to do that. Hopefully it might help other people who have not quite yet got to level 70 and got a G6 Epic. This probably would be easier if you had 2 G6 rares, but I've only got one. I've kind of gone all in on taking my Koskari up to tier 13, level 65, so I've not really spread my resources onto multiple G6 rares. You can see it's actually set up for PvP, because that's my default setting on this. So we'll talk through the crews that I've put onto that to see how we can do these 66 outposts, and then I was just going to talk through PvP, and quite a few people do ask me, because I normally, so far with this ship, I can kill max G6 epics, also some of them 130, 140 billion cubes, and also Vengeance is up to about 130, 140 billion as well, so there's a way that the Koskari can do that. It's quite a good ship for hitting up, although you can counter it, but most people don't have the knowledge to do that. So we'll talk through some of the PvP, some of the best ways, the best crews, I will talk about maybe how I'll need to adjust my crews at G6 Epic level, but I'll focus mostly for the people who are in this sort of range, who want to do PvP in arenas or PvP into incursions. Can you get them a bit quieter? Screaming, kids in the background screaming. So just collect these. Right, okay. So let's talk about the crews I've got. So let's send these home first, and then I can show you the below decks on the crews as well, and talk through the logic behind how we defeat these. So we first have a look at the outpost itself. You see, this is a regular 66 Borg outpost. So the first thing to note here is these Borg ones are the ones you want to be doing if you want to complete them, because the other outposts have much stronger hostiles and much stronger effects, although you can counter that using Cisco the effects. So for example, one of the other outposts kind of does hull strip each round, which, as you can imagine, when you go in Sims 2 rounds, is going to have quite a big effects. And also the hostiles just seem stronger, whereas the Borg ones in this space just does. In fact, let me get my phones if anyone's chatting. But these ones in the Borg space, they just do ISO damage, which can counter via your own ISO defense, or the outposts themselves. When you look at the upgrades, allows you to add isolated defense. Now, when I first started these, I was taking this all the way up to the max 1400%, but I was finding when I toned that down a bit, it weren't making much difference. So clearly, I already had enough ISO defense to get to the maximum amount of effect to reduce the ISO damage that we're doing. So I've been pulling this down slightly all the time, and I've got it down to 500%. And the next one I do, I'll set it at maybe 400 or 300% and still see if I can complete them. So you're on the stream to see if anyone's asking in the chat, because I didn't go onto Twitch. So let me have a look, see if anyone's stream manager. Okay, connected to chat. Okay, just got that in case I need to keep an eye on anything anyone says. Okay, so my ship's back now, yeah. So let's repair these for a start. Get these repaired. Speed up. 3. Repair. That's for help. Speed up. Small speed up 3. So I've got my chat open now, so if the microphone's still too low, if you can't hear me, please do say, and I'll try and talk louder, bring my microphone a bit closer, or tune something up. But it seemed to be defaulting as an input device to my webcam, so hopefully now it's on my headset. Should be a lot better. Okay, right. So let's start with the ships I've got. So as you can see here, the first ship is my Koze. This is my primary ship that I use for PvP and anything really hard on PvE, and then my Cube is my primary PvE ship just because it's a lot cheaper to repair. So we'll start off with the Koze. You can see here it's tier 13, but you could probably still do this, I reckon, at tier 12. I don't think you need to do tier 13. You could even do it at tier 11. I'm not sure it makes that much of a difference, and I still think you could probably do it with tier 11 or 12, but you would have to try that for yourself. The tech I've got on this one is a slipstream. Slipstream's super important. Increasing my crit chance, so it means that my Koze right off the bat has got an extra 18% along with anything else that's in there, and the Koze does big round 1 damage, so this is really helpful both in PvP and in these outposts or other PvE. And most importantly, well, I mean, I also mentioned the extra shield health of 3,150% obviously works well with an explorer, the explorers have got more shields, so that really helps boost its primary defensive stat. And most importantly, this 22% shield mitigation every round. So what that means is that after round 1 there'll be 22% more damage that goes straight through to the hull. Round 2, 44. Round 3, 66. Round 4, 88. And then along with other kind of shield mitigation, decrease of opponent's shield mitigation on other general stuff you have in the game, normally by round 4 you're basically hitting direct onto the hull, which has a big impact because the outpost or the other hostiles or whatever, or even the PvP, this works in PvP as well, mean that you're hitting straight through to the hull. So if you've not got the slipstream, I would say it should be, for PvE and PvP, should be number 1 primary goal. You can now get it free to play. You can get it free to play at, is it in the Alliance tournaments? Can't remember where it was. You can definitely get it free to play though. Maybe it's in the factions. Is it in the DTI? No, maybe it's in Section 31. No, it'll come to me. You can definitely get it free to play though. I don't think it's in the, you get Tantalus Field there. Can't remember, but you can definitely get free to play. Whenever I'll post it to the chat later whereabouts. So that, and then I mean this does nothing for me in my Q cannon. So really, if I were being mate, I would take my Q cannon off this. I'm telling you, there's not a lot on Outposts that works because it's not an armada and it's not an hostile. So you'd really just want something that increases, you know, base hull health or base shield. So there's not a great deal you can use on these. In fact, I'm having a look through now. I don't think there's anything that just... See, they're not invading entity either, so I don't think Chrono Deflector works. So now there is, on Talking Trek, there's a bit of a sheet about what's the best FT to use for Outposts, but to be honest with you, it's not going to be a difference maker, because the only thing you can get is a bit of extra health, a bit extra hull, and a bit of extra damage. So I won't read too much about them. So that's ship 1. So we look at the crew on this one first. So let me show you what I've got. So the first one I've got is Max Harcourt Fenton Mud. So why is he useful? So 40% chance to raise shield mitigation to 98% for the first 2 rounds of combat. So because my Explorer is my main ship, this ship is going to be tackling all the interceptors and all the explorers. So 2 out of 3 ships that it spawns is going to be hitting the ship. So that's why people often ask, why is your Koskari dying before your Q? It's not because the Q's stronger, it's because this ship's taking more hits, which is good because it's my strongest ship. A-break, don't know how long I've been in, mate. I'm just talking through crew setups for Outposts, what I've got, why, you know, probably quite useful for people in the Ops 66 to 69 range. When you get to Ops 70, if you get yourself a G6 Epic, then these 66 should, with 3 ships, should become, you know, pretty easy. So, but it's really quite hard to do them, and when you're Ops, and most people are defaulting to doing 63 regulars and 60 elites. So yeah, so because this ship's doing the most thing, what this captain's ability does, and it's a 40% chance, means that if that triggers, then basically I don't take any hull health for the first 2 rounds of combat, and I'm normally killing the hostiles in 3 to 4 rounds. So at almost the toss of a coin, I'm getting a lot less hull damage. So because it's 72 rounds, this is actually really effective captain's ability to have. If it doesn't trigger, obviously you're going to take more hull damage because you'll be taking damage on the first 2 rounds and you're not getting any benefit from the captain's ability. But overall, because you're doing 72 rounds and this ship's going to take at least 2/3 of the hostiles that gets attacked because of the setup of the ships, and I'll explain that in a bit, then it's a good captain's ability. And then his officer ability is 6% chance to double the shots of all the weapons of the first round of combat. And this works really well again for the Koskari because its firing pattern means that it does all its heavy damage in round 1. So it's kind of the perfect captain to have on the Koskari as a ship that's going to be taking most of the hostiles on the outpost. So that's captain. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, obviously, if your main ship's not a Koskari, let's say it's an interceptor, or let's say it's a battleship, so the other epics, let's have not officers, go to the ships. Let's have a look at the ships. We'll go shipyard level. I'm going to build that soon. Yeah, so let's say you've got a Velox or a Titan. Now the firing patterns on these are not quite as good for the first round of the Koskari, but I still think this crew setup would work equally as well if you either the Velox or the Titan is your main G6 rare ship. I just think you need to be about tier 11 minimum, maybe tier 12. I think tier 11 would be fine. But yeah, the firing patterns are not quite as good on these two. Which you'd think normally the interceptors are the best for PvP, but actually I find that the Kozi is a lot better in PvP given the meta of early massive ISO damage, but we'll talk about that later. So yeah, I think it should work for any of them ships. Go back to the officers. So you might be thinking, well, what the hell is Gowron doing there? So what does Gowron do? Increases the ship's shield deflection by 1,100% of total crew health, and unfortunately I've not got him maxed. I mean, I don't even know if I've just naturally clicked buttons over time and I've got him up to level 20. So if I do get a chance now, I'm going to try and get Gowron, Mortok and Bael, which are the free versions of these, to max. So why am I using this? Well, we've got to understand how the outposts work. So what the outposts will do is that if it spawns an interceptor at a battleship, it will always attack like with triangle advantage. Yeah, so basically what we're saying is that when I've got these 3 ships, which is an explorer, battleship, when it spawns a battleship, it wants the triangle advantage, so it's going to attack my explorer. Yeah. On the flip reverse, if it spawns an interceptor, it's going to want to attack a battleship. Yeah. Which is my cube or my really quite poor rubbish Negi, which you can see here that actually this is a really poor 3rd ship, but it still works. So it wants to attack one of these two. So which one's it going to attack? Well, it always attacks the weakest one. So if you've got 2 battleships, it's going to attack the weakest battleship. So when it spawns interceptors, it's going to attack my weakest battleship. If it spawns battleships, it's going to attack my Kozi. When it spawns explorers, then again it doesn't want to go against the triangle of the 2 battleships. so it's going to attack the explorer. So that's its, even though it's not kind of got triangle advantage, it's not got triangle disadvantage. Your mind is on it. Oh yeah, it is. Thanks, Break. let me spot on that. Just refresh it. Cheers, boss. I don't really need to keep that there, but I will for now, and I will refresh. It's refreshed now, mate. Don't worry. Okay, so that's where we are in terms of the ships attacking, because this is building up the story as to why Gowron is really effective to use on an explorer. So what's Gowron traditionally been used for? It was kind of the anti to people using what's it called? 1 second. No, that's not what I want to do. Defense, Marcus. So what you used to do in PvP is if you're attacking an explorer, you would use Marcus to get extra shield piecing, and you could kind of counter the triangle. So you would use Marcus to fight explorers, you would use Chalamek to attack battleships, and you would use Kang to attack interceptors. And it would mean that you could overcome the triangle disadvantage. So this is when you were attacking in PvP, you'd use these officers. So what they brought out was the and I'll go back and I'll put it on group. So they brought out this group of things which had Mortok, Bael and Gowron, which meant that you could kind of counter that. So you would increase your own, in this case with Gowron, shield deflection to kind of counter the shield piercing that the other officers did. Okay, so that's why these came out, but these don't just work in PvP, they also work in PvE. So if you put them two concepts together, what we can do is buff our shield deflection to almost counter the triangle advantage of the battleship attacking our explorer. And you might be thinking, have you tested? Now, I tried to do this without Gowron, and I died with about 15 hostiles to go. Then I put Gowron in and I completed it with, as you saw earlier, all the way down to just 500% increase in ISO defense on the outpost. So it's made like a massive difference, which I thought it would do. So again, why? Why is that happening? Let me go and have a look at one of my logs. If we go to, let's go down to one where it's probably attacking my explorer. Let's have a look. Yeah, so this one's attacked my Cosley. You can see there it's done like that much damage, and that's a wave 2s. Look at the battle log. Go down and look at this battle log. So first of all, okay, so in this case I didn't get a proc of what's it called? Mud. So I didn't get a proc of mud. So I am taking hull damage. But you can see here, out of the 416 million isolated damage, I've already mitigated 395 million of that damage. So you'd think against Borg outposts, because they get extra ISO damage, that you'd want to just go all in on stopping isolated damage. But once you've sorted that out, and that's why I'm bringing down the isolated defense now to the lowest level I can, because I keep bringing that down and I'm still already at probably the max mitigation. So I'm just going to keep bringing it down and bringing it down and bringing it down until I don't need to bother putting buffs on. Now hopefully maybe I can run it without any outpost buffs, and my base isolated damage defense from all my officers and artifacts and everything else that goes on, it's just enough anyway to do this. But what I think people misunderstand it is that actually most of the hull damage you're going to get would be coming from regular standard damage. So you can see here, it's 208 standard damage, and I'm only mitigating 110, and that's with Gowron. So before, it was 208 standard damage, and I was only mitigating like 50 million or 40 million of that, because it's got the triangle advantage on me. Yeah, does that make sense? So it's got the triangle advantage on me, so by adding in Gowron, it means I'm now mitigating nearly half of the standard damage. Which then, you apply your Apex barrier, do all your shield health stuff, and then you end up with just 20 million hull damage. And that was like almost 3 or 4 times less hull damage than without Gowron. So it made a huge difference. And basically it meant that my Kozi didn't die, which meant that all the damage, which meant, you know, as soon as this Kozi died, I'd lose most of my damage potential. And it means that, you know, the Borg cube's got to fend for itself and it just gets smashed. So that's a logic about putting in. I know it's a little bit complex, but you know, you don't probably need to know all the maths and science behind it. Maybe just take a look at the crews and reuse them if you want to, and I'll summarise them at the end. But I just thought it'd be interesting for people to know the logic and reason why these crews work. So in here I'm using Gowron, but like I mentioned, if your main ship was a interceptor, then you would use Mortok. And if your main ship was a battleship, you would use Bial. Yeah. So you can't just, if you can't just rock up with this and say, I'm gonna put this same crew in and use Gowron on a battleship, or I'm going to use Gowron on an interceptor, because it won't work. You've got to make sure you're choosing the right, you know, crew member from that group for the ship. So the other thing I've got on here is Khan. What, I don't even know how to say this name. I think that's spelled if I call him Joachim, or Joachim, however we want to call him. And he's maxed, and you can max him relatively easily now. Most people should have, hopefully, via the walk arc and the faction that goes with that. So he'd give me 500% isolated defense, which I think is probably enough on his own. I need to test this to completely negate the Op 66 isolated damage, or enough that this ship's not going to die till the end. But the first few levels on the Outposts of isolated defense are really cheap, so if I get it down to say 300%, then, or 400%, then I think that'd be quite cost efficient to just keep doing that. But he's on there, and he's really critically important because of the way the Borg outposts work. As I mentioned before, most of the other officers don't work because it's not an armada, it's not an hostile. So I've kind of gone for officers that, one, just increases base damage. Now you could also use, let me show you damage. Well, not such a good route, so let me go to below deck. You could also use D-Shock as well, because the ship's weapon damage by 700%. To be honest, I should probably use him on my main ship, but I've got him on my cube. But this is another good officer to use. So anything that just increases base damage is going to be useful. And then you can see there I've got why have we done that? Can't undo that. I'll put that officer back in. She got there, Tendy. In this case, just an extra 215% hull health just means a minor amount of extra hull, but it may be like 1 or 2 more hostiles it allows you to kill, but that's fine. At least it's doing something, it's adding value, and also because these two are maxed, it's pretty good stats, which is adding towards Gowron's, you know, ability. Odo, which I think just works. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think Odo will work. It just said Odo increases critical hit damage by 25%, so I think that just works on everything. See, it's not particularly high level. I'm not really worked on him, but it's an extra 25% damage on critical hits. And then I also think that Tom works as well. Or maybe not. I'm not 100% sure. Someone needs to let me know. I will need to check to see, because that does say player hostiles or armadas. So maybe it doesn't. So I'd find out. If Tom didn't work, I would literally just slot in another health officer, sort by health. These two away, so probably just, if that weren't on an away team, I'd probably just slot in 10. And again, you can see here I've done stop that. So here you can see I've whacked in 6 here because it's got really good health, and it also gives me them maximum stats. So maybe the tweak I could do here is, if Tom doesn't work, which there is a list actually that says whether they do or don't, I should check that. I could take Tom out and put in another health officer to power up Gowron more, giving more shield deflection by having more health, which allows me to offset more of the against triangle damage. So, yeah, just check my phone, see if I want to put it on there. Good. Okay, so that's that crew setup. Oh, and Korn. So the reason why, obviously, everyone should know Korn by now. 1, again, good stats, good health, helps Gowron, but also every time the ship is hit by a weapon attack, it increases the critical hit. Now, because in this case I'm getting hit all the time, then Korn's a good one to use. Now, Korn would be a really bad one to use on your cube for a reason why I'll explain. I did that first time round, and thanks to people on the Talking Trek channel to explain why that was bad, although I should have figured that out myself. But in this case, because 2/3 of the hostiles that get spawned, whether it's a battleship or an explorer, are attacking me, it means that that's going to proc quite often, not 2/3 of the time. So I've not used E-Riker in this case because I need to save him for my cube. I'll explain why in a minute. But anyway, that just means that we can get up to 100% crit chance quickly. And crits do a lot more damage. So again, if I go to this, we'll see. So we can do a regular hit. So a regular hit's doing 2.6 billion whole health damage, and a non-crit is doing 494 million. So I just need to get up to get as many crits in as I can as possible. You can start here, you'll just scroll through, you can start on the cubes, go to the next round. Round 3, you constantly crit, there you go. So very quickly I've got myself up to nearly, apart from that one, 100% crits. So just need to think about getting them crits up as fast as possible. Okay, next we'll go to the other ship, and we've got the cube. So on the cube I've got the maxed, well not quite maxed, Agimus. The hostile rewards help, I guess, but I don't think anything else does. But the increase, maybe it does increase hostile rewards, but I just have these preset up. Like I said, these don't have a massive impact. You can see on the cube I've got my PvE set up, which is the Agimus. I mean, it's best to probably have the slipstream as well, but I'm not going to swap back and forth PvE, PvP, the slipstream, because it's really expensive to swap around the tech. So I just kind of leave this set up. and I use my cube to insta warp to a 70 zone and kill in the hazard space, and it just does my dailies instantly. You might be saying, how can you reach the 70 without slipstream on? I just swap out. I use a speed crew and swap in and put Grush in, which means I can just hit into the wall, zoom around, kill loads of ships, blow up, and then I've completed all my dailies for that faction. So it's kind of, it was provisionally set up tech-wise for that, and I've not really changed it. So then if you have a look at the officers that I've got, we've got Gorkon, which increases critical hit chance, which is good. And as you saw, I'm kind of going 3 to 4 rounds, so you know, I'm only going to get, you know, I'm getting that increased critical hit chance for at least 50% of the rounds I'm doing. But more importantly, once I get critical hit, I get hull breach. So hull breach is important. I'm not going to go into all the reasons why it's important. It triggers extra critical damage. It triggers the store research, extra ISO damage. It triggers artifacts which give extra ISO damage. So it does a multitude of things to get all these effects up and running. So this will always trigger hull breach. And then you've got Chang, which basically saying if the ship deals a critical hit to the opponent's ship while it has a hull breach, which it should do, you got a coin toss chance of delaying its next weapon attack by 1 round. So in essence, this ship does not get attacked until the Negi dies, the Negvo dies. So it's just sat in the background doing damage, delaying attacks by 1 every time it deals a critical hit. So its job is to kind of push the hostiles' damage out as far as possible. Now obviously you can say it just pushes it out 1, but if it just keeps pushing them out 1, then you're going to take 1 less hit and damage by the end of it. So you're reducing the amount of damage you take by pushing them out. Works quite well. And then E-Riker, and now here with E-Riker is important because it increases critical hit chance by 6% for 4 rounds, which I've said we only go 3 to 4 rounds, so it's basically, that's fine. Each time you score a hit, once per weapon. 1, the cube does loads of hits, like loads. So if you look at the cube, it's got like quite a lot of guns, and them guns do a lot of hits. So that's good. And 2, it means that we're not needing to be taking damage from the hostile. Regardless of what happened, we're going to be getting this increased crit chance. So E-Riker's wasted on my Cosy. If I put Khorne onto here, I'm just never going to get any hit chance until the Negvo dies. So we don't want to be doing that. So out of the crit starters, this one, and I should now really push this to max, but again I've just clicked buttons and naturally took this up. But I'm going to start working on the NE mitigation, not mitigation, the NE efficiency on the away team stuff, and I'll start trying to push him up to max. But either way, it's enough. And you can see here, I've just now I don't think Vial works. Now D-Chock does work, so we get some extra ship damage. S&W Black Ops does work, so we get more hull health, so that's fine. And then the others are just making sure I get my maximum stats. They're not really doing anything but that, really. So maybe there's some tweaking below decks I could do. Maybe there's some more officers like that adds hull health or adds, yeah, maybe if I could swap out one of these for Doc to get extra loot, that'd do something. But again, it's not massively important. I've kind of got most of my best below decks officers on my Cosy. In fact, in the future, I'm going to put D-Chock onto my Cosy, as long as it. In fact, I can upgrade that. Can I? No, not yet. Not 4 of them. Okay, so that's that set up, and that ship's not going to get hit at all until my 3rd ship dies, because all interceptors are going to attack with triangle advantage against my weakest battleship, which is this one, and all explorers and all battleships are going to attack this one. So this literally just sits there taking no damage till like there's 20 hostiles off, till the point this ship dies, which is normally with about, once it gets to wave 2, the ship struggles big time and then just quickly dies after about 5 or 6 rounds. So 5 or 6 rounds of them. But that's good. So it's sat in the background, doing a decent amount of damage with crits. It's not that bothered about defense, but what it is doing critical hits with hull breach, which are delaying the shots. And then I've got my final ship, which is the Negvar. So on that one again, to be honest with you, I don't even know. I mean, see, that does increase hull health, so that's interesting. So like, I might actually, if I were that bothered, I'd probably stick that onto my Cosy, but it's really expensive to swap FTs in and out. And I guess that does help the ship survive as well, so probably quite useful to keep on. And that's not doing anything either. I tell you what, probably is a decent one to use is, where is it? That Metreon. That increases hull health, but I've not really leveled that. If you got that Metreon Cascade warhead leveled, and you're getting 2,100% health, I would stick that on the ship. That'd be quite a good one to use. Okay, so then in terms of the officers, okay, another interesting one. We've got 1 of 11. So what does, I mean, the bodyguard just does nothing. Protected cargo, you can ignore that. But the captain's maneuver said the ship mitigates more damage to the shield health instead of the hull health. So this ship is getting hit from the beginning, and it's my weakest ship. So in essence, what I need it to do is shields not drop, and that doesn't help this, but what it does do, it means that more of the damage that comes in doesn't go to the hull and goes onto the shield. So as long as the shield doesn't drop in the battle, then I'm going to be taking less hull health. And obviously we need the ship to survive as long as possible, so that's important. And then 5 is basically giving me 2% synergy, so instead of being 5% extra onto the shield, it's now giving me 7% extra. Now there is an argument you could go full synergy and get 9%. I've not tried that. I'll explain why in a minute, but and you are also getting extra loot, and 5 does work on Outposts, by the way. So there is an argument, if you just want maximum loot, you could just use 1 ship, drop down to like 60s, and just do full loot crew. And the 1 ship will kill everything with maximum loot, and that will get you the most amount of loot. But this is set up more for hitting as high as you can for stuff like SLBs. But yeah, so that's that shit there. And then the reason why I've got Nero in is just because it's kind of sat procking burning, and once it procs once, what I found with Nero, it just kind of just stays on forever. Although the thing is with Nero, I mean, you could put GG there instead, it's probably better. And I've got GG maxed as well. She's 80% chance of burning for 2 rounds. So in essence, maybe it don't really make much difference. But GG does allow you to proc burning in round 1, so maybe that's a better setup. In fact, it probably is a better setup. So yeah, or maybe yeah, and also I've got max stats anyway, so it doesn't really matter whether I put Nero there or not, and cheese max anyway. So yeah, that's probably a better setup. But either way, the reason why I want burning there is because it gets burning going. And now even if this ship is not getting attacked, it's still going to set burning going onto the hostile, and that means that my other ships will then get the benefits from the ISO damage, ISO defense, all the different researchers, all the different artifacts and techs, etc. So the only status effect I'm missing from this setup is morale. So there's an argument I could put morale here instead, and it may make this ship last longer because it would give me shield regen from the Nova research. So it's a balance between increasing the damage of my other ships versus increasing survivability of this ship. But it's working, so I'm keeping burn, because it feels like burn gives 3 ships extra benefit, whereas morale will only give this 1 ship extra benefit. And then you can see I've just thrown on the extra shield health because I don't want the shield dropping on this particular shape. I don't think it has a massive difference, but why not? Extra penetration, just because it works, and I don't need the stats really for this to max them out. And I do actually have pick you, and again I should really max out pick you. I don't know why I've not so far. I'm going to make it priority soon. But basically it means that some of the damage I do take, look at that, 35% is a lot at rank 5, so I really should make that. If you got a max pick you, you'll be really good for the outposts. But that means that after 1 round's gone, whatever whole health damage I've taken, I'll reclaim a percentage of it back in the next round. And then you can add there's other research and stuff that adds to that, so maybe you can get like up to 50, 60, 70%. I think it caps out, by the way. I don't think you can get 100%, or either just be immortal. But there is a cap. But this is probably a priority officer for me to level. By the way, I put them on this ship, and I think he's quite a powerful outpost officer, but I think he's the most powerful for survivability, so therefore I needed him on my worst ship to try and keep it alive. Okay, so they're the 3 ships that go on. So what happens when we start the outpost is that the first thing to know is, let me swap this, I will always take my my Titan and my Cerrito, and I will not max 4 because it's just a waste, and I save my max forts for PvP, but I'll fortify, and I will Cerrito both my Cosy, and I will cloak my Cosy. I also press this ability because why not, even though I'm almost certain it won't work. It's not a hostile or armada, but I press it just in case Scopely messed up and these percentages do actually work. But I've not tested if they do or don't. But it's going to be sat there doing nothing for 6 hours with a 1 hour cooldown, so I might as well press the button. The attack pattern alpha. So I kind of pre-buff to make sure that when we first defeat the outpost, I've taken the minimal amount of damage. It just kind of sets you up, and then them buffs probably last for 2 or 3 more hostile waves, maybe 2, because they come every 5 minutes. But then I don't reapply them. But if you were really struggling, you could reapply the Titan buff. But I wouldn't reapply. I don't think you can reapply the Cerrito buff. Someone mentioned that. I've not tested it, but somebody mentioned it on the DJ's talking track that you can't reapply 3 or above. Maybe you can't target them once they're in the actually engaged in the outpost itself, but you can reapply that because it's just kind of a system-wide buff for everything. And then what happens is it's RNG whether it spawns an interceptor, battleship, or explorer. So on average, over the 72 rounds, you know, it should be 33% explorer, 33% interceptor, 33% battleship. But it probably isn't. There's RNG in it. So, you know, if in my case, if I'm really unlucky, probably spawns loads of interceptors and kills my Negvor really quickly, which then just leaves me with 2 ships. If I'm really lucky, it probably spawns battleships, which with Gowron means I've kind of reversed the triangle and I don't take as much damage, and my explorer tanks them all, and that survives longer. But either way, what happens is that the rounds tick down. This ship loses a bit of damage, it's about there. This ship loses a lot of damage, gets to wave 2 with about, I don't know, 30ish left. I think it's 30 to go. Might be less, might be 20. But whatever, when it gets to wave 2, where the hostiles turn from level 60, 67. So let's have a look. If we go to see, look, there was 66 here. And if we have a look, you can see my Negi had that much health left, and my Kozi had that much health left. You see my cube's just totally untouched because this ship's tanking it all, and this ship's tanking it all. So then, well, very quickly you'll see, let's see one, see it's starting to do more damage. The 67 is a lot more painful. See my Kozi. See, look, so that's 3 on a row, 67s, attack my Koskori, 5 on a row. Okay, now look, it attacked the Negvor, look at that. Ooh. So then round 2 hostile, they're really just too strong. You see, because like now, I'm losing my shield, so 1's not doing anything really. Now if I powered up this more, and it, you know, because it's a really poor tier, what is it? It's only tier 6. Or if I had, say, a low grade G6 rare, then, you know, this would work an absolute treat, and this 3rd ship wouldn't die. But it's dying really quickly. Really quickly, see there, like, it's good, it attacked my Kozi. Oh, look, dead. So my Negvor's died there, look. So now, after the Negvor, you see, look, in that round, it started to attack my cube. So it's killed the Negvor, and now it's moved onto the cube. See there, look. So it took no damage all the way till that round. If you have a look, that would probably... Yeah. So how left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So 72, take away 23, 52, 50, yeah, 50 to round 51 basically. It died, so it lasted 51 rounds. And now these 2 are just tanking as it goes, so if from here on in, if it does an interceptor, it is a cube. If it does an explorer battleship, it does my Koskari. And yeah, the battleship, the cube does it okay. But you can see there, look, that's how much damage my cube takes. It doesn't drop its shield, but I've not set up for defence on it, so at this point, you know, it is starting to hurt. And as we get down right near the end, you can see here that look, it's taking that much chunk, but they're both hanging in, and as long as they both survive, they just kind of rotate 2/3 or 1/3 on average, and then they see it out. So that's kind of how outposts work. So that works on Op 60, on Outpost 66s, So you might be asking, what does that mean for elites? I don't want to do that. Let me go back. Let me show you where the elites are. Go to Galaxy. So that's in the Vaughan axis, is where you can go if you got 3 ships. Now you might say, how have you got 3 ships and not 2? So brief one on that is I got this thing here, Outpost Control Centre, up to 40. So once you get it to 40, fleet side by 1. Now I've not bought any packs for this. So you might think, oh, he's bought packs to get it up to 40. I've not bought any packs at all for that building. That's purely from doing the battle pass and competing in the SLBs, from trying to be ahead of the curve on the stuff that I've done. So there's an SLP on at the moment. Go to Outposts. You can see that I'm 3rd. She'll get me another 3,900. And you can see there, look, 135.64, 135.64. So we've both basically done 2 full 66s. I will be setting another one off at some point today. So it'll all depend on who's going to run more of the 66s. Now I did try an elite, so let me go back. So now the first thing to know, if I did an Ops 60 at a level 60 elite, this would just basically kill it with little to no damage taken, like nothing. So the 60s, if you got a setup like this, are really quite easy because they're basically G5 and not G6. So yeah, the 60s are elite 60s. Where are they? Oh, they're not even here, are they? The elite 60s are not in that group. Outpost 60 Borg elites are here. So they're in like the G5 zone. And they're like the hardest of the G5s. So if you want to complete them, then, and before I got this set up, then I were doing elite 60s. Now, this setup which I've just showed you here got me through to 10 remaining hostiles on the elite 63s, which I think's probably better than completing the elite 60s, because I get more for killing the outpost and I get G6 related loot for completing them. So there's a 63 elite here in this Vadicsa, and that setup I just showed you, you know, I've only done it once, so I need to take into account RNG and what ships get attacked, but it got me down to about round 62 of 72, so there's about 10 rounds remaining, which, if you think that you get a chest every, I don't know, every 5 or 6 rounds, again that's RNG, then it's probably worth doing. See what do I get here, look, see, look, rares and uncommons for that Ob 66. So these elite ones get you, I think, some epics loot. Again, I'm not 100% sure, I need to test it fully. But yeah, so like if I look at the scoring on the SLBs, which I'm primarily doing this for, because again, if I just wanted to loot, I would probably just do one ship with a loot crew. No, wrong one. Oh no, right one. On boss events. So here we've got, well, first of all, you can see 66 compared to 63s. The wave 2s are double the points. The wave 1s are double the points. So the fact that I'm getting all the way through the 66s, it's a no-brainer to use my regular directive on the 66s. And for the elite, you can see that 6s give me 240, 63 wave 1 will give me 480, and then it's 480 and 960. So the fact I'm only missing out on 10 times the differential of them points. Yeah, well, I'm missing out on 10 times 480 points, as opposed to getting, 62 times or 52 times this and 10 times that. So for the SLB, it makes sense for me to do it on the 63s. And I also think the loot it probably does as well. So I'm now going to move to 63s, and I'm going to keep trying to improve the best I can in terms of see if I can clear the 63s. Now I have, since I did that test actually on my Cosy, I added this, no, not the shield, the titanium armor, which gave me like about an extra 1.5 billion hull, about 2 billion hull, so it went up from 18 to 20.4. So that's one of the only times I spent outside of the Crucible's heroic SMS, because there were no, to get that part, yes, it took a load of Sigma trait, but it didn't use any of the other point scoring resources. So that's now, that went up about, I think it was like 22.4 billion, it went up to 23.6 billion, so it had a decent power boost. And also, every time there is an event for Cisco, I'm boosting stuff like Battle of Wolf. So that is the other thing to know as well. So Cisco does help on these, just so you can see what I've got. But I've not got loads on. I've kind of focused mostly on the loot, getting more loot. You see, I have gone for lots of shield health and a bit of extra hull health and a bit of extra damage. But I mean, this was just quite cost effective to get up that 4 for the extra bonus, which I found were really useful through all parts of the game. But you can see here I've ignored these two because reduces hypothermic decay against node outposts, so you need that if you want to do the node outposts, but their hostiles are so much stronger. And then again, if you want to increase the Apex shred to overcome Apex barrier on the Cardassian ones, you need to do this. But because I'm focusing mostly on the Borg ones, this Battle Level 359 great episode is the one I'm going to slowly add up. I should probably have done this higher, if I'm being honest, if I wanted to be meta. And the same with the increased weapon damage against the outposts, that's quite a good one to do. So these two, for what I'm doing, are really useful. Yeah, and I've started, because I've now got Cisco up to rank 7, kind of unlock this third row. Obviously what I really want to get is this, where increase outpost fleet size by 1. So I've got to get him up to rank 13 and I'm 7. And you need these commanders authority, which is way back, so I've got to like kind of work my way through this tree to get that. So it's a bit away that, but once I've got that I'll have 4 ships. Well, I'll probably have a G6 epic by then, and maybe I'll be looking at 70s in terms of outposts. So it's a slow burn, these. You can see I could spend now, but I'm just holding it in case they do any other events. At the very minimum there'll be a Crucible where you score points for spending Cisco points on it. So I think that's pretty much it for Outposts. That's what I've done. So how could I improve? What could I do better? I think I could tweak my lower decks slightly. I could tweak my FTs, but at a very expensive cost to swap. So, I could swap, maybe if that was maxed out, I could swap that in, but 13.5k. I mean, I do have 255, so I could do, but if you keep swapping in and out all the time, it gets ungodly expensive. That I could max maybe this cybernetic implant. And how much would that give me? 1800%, and keep swap that in and out. So that would help, but I don't think it's going to help a massive amount, and not the they want to keep burning down these fusion rods. I mean, I do have a lot. That's creeped up. Well, I didn't realise I had that much. That shows how little I swap my tech around. Just while I'm on this, you'll see I've got the mimic as well. That's on the FT here. The biome mimetic gel. So it's not great at the moment, but once it gets to max, 400% ISO defense is good. As we've shown, ISO damage in PvP is important. Reducing opponent's damage, okay, not brilliant, but still quite a lot. But then 30k apex barrier. That's a lot. 30k apex barrier is like, put the PvP crew on. PvP crew on. There. That's like, what we got? Just Cascade. Terrible Twins, so 2 VOC below decks. Yeah, you get 25k. So it's like another proc of 2 VOC, and we know that they're super effective and important. It's one of the reasons why you want to attack first. Yeah, so when I say attack first, I mean you want to be the last to click attack, which means in the battle log you are the first to attack. Because when you do that, you're guaranteed a proc of these 2 officers below deck, which gives you 25k apex barrier, and it gives you 140% extra ISO cascade damage. So that tech gets you almost like another guaranteed proc of this, but better. So it should be quite strong. So that's Outpost done, and I did want to talk about, in fact we'll confirm that, because I did want to talk about PvP. So if there is any more questions or anyone's got any thoughts on Outposts, or you had any further questions, feel free to ask questions in the chat. Okay, we're good. I'm going to be recording this and putting it onto YouTube anyway, so that's fine. So let's talk about PvP, because I did add a few Alliance mates want to know about PvP and how to increase ISO damage and defense and how to shoot up, etc. So I'll talk about what crew I use, why it's probably meta for what I do, and like I said, it has allowed me to kill like 100 billion plus cubes, 140 billion vengeances, and like 70, 75, maybe 80 billion G6 epics. So it's a really powerful crew for a G6 rare, and it can take people really by surprise, but you do need to be prepared. You can't just rock up like for like and not give yourself an advantage to shoot that higher up. On a like for like, it's going to be quite a few tiers down. Still strong, but still going to be quite a few tiers down. But it is a nasty surprise for people in arenas and in incursions, because they really do expect that they're just going to comfortably beat, when they just see very easy, when they click on a Ops 68 and I was 67 before, they just expect they're going to kill me, and then they realise that they don't. So this is just a bit of an overview on my setup, and also almost a state of PvP for the offensive crews that have just come out, because there's some new ones that have just come out as well, and whether they'll be better or not. So first thing to know, I am using the Cosy, which is an Explorer. It's not the Interceptor, which means I can't use IST, which is the strike team, the Interceptor strike team, which is this here, Interceptor strike team. Now, this is what I used previously on my Rotti before, and it served me very, very well. But the reason why I've moved to Freeman, Wharf and Retaliator 7, yeah, I call it S7 or R7, is because the firing pattern on the Koskari, if we go upgrade, look at the guns, look at the firing pattern, look, charge time 1, but recharge time 2. So that means every round it's kind of charge up, do 2 shots. Down, same for the 2 energy ones, and then the kinetic kind of does lots of big heavy shots in the first round, but then skips the second round and don't come back again till later on down the line. So it without going into all the details of the firing patterns, what it means is that this ship does really heavy damage in round 1. Not so great in round 2, okay in round 3, and then kind of repeats, but you don't want it to be going to round 4 plus against 140 billion power vengeances, because you'll just literally be dead. So the aim of this PvP setup is literally to kill the opponent in round 1, and if not, wound it so bad in terms of, you know, whole health, that even if you take damage in round 2 and 3, you're managing to see it off in round 2 and 3. If you let this go to round 7, 8, 9, 10, then this ship will just, this setup will not work. But most people don't do that and will get killed in the first round. So you can see there what we've got on it. I've got maxed out Freeman, which gives you extra shots, so we're doubling the shots up. So because we're doing a really heavy round 1, it means we're going to get double the shots in round 1. So Freeman's still really useful. Now there is a new officer, which means you can get more shots in round 1, but cover her in a minute. And then once we've got a state going, which Freeman herself does not apply, then we'll get 130% extra cascade damage, so it's going to really boost cascade damage. Now, ISO damage not being critical doesn't really matter. You've got to do critical hits, so hence max Wharf, which gives you 100% extra crit chance. So unbuffed, against most players, I'm still going to be 100% crit chance from round 1. When I'm buffed with Cerrito and Titan, and if I debuff them, particularly with the Junker and the Mantis, then I'm definitely getting 100% crit chance. So every shot from round 1 is going to be crits, and we'll be doing 100% extra, 100% more. Now you might be thinking, why are you using R9? Well, especially 7. It's because I managed to get her up to level 20, which means that she has 90% chance to apply hull breach, and I'm trying to get it to max, so it's 100% chance. You really do want a status effect to trigger so you can get Carol Freeman's extra cascade damage and everything else that goes along with hull breach as well, like extra critical damage and the proccing of all your other abilities. So I've swapped over to Specialist 7, but if you've not got Specialist 7, then you would use Lorca. Go to Lorca. You see he's maxed, but he's only 80% chance, which is still most of the time. But I have found when you really want him to proc in round 1 and he doesn't proc in round 1, you're like, ugh. If he would have procced, you know, that Max Epic would have died, or that Max GC's Epic would have died, or that Vengeance would have died. It didn't proc, and you're like, and you've lost maybe narrowly or just by a few percentage points. You still give them a bit of a bloody nose, but you're thinking, oh, we should have procced. So, if we can get to the point where we're 100%, and now obviously I've got 10% better chance now with Retaliator, especially 7 compared to Lorca, which is at 100%, which is an absolute beast. That means I've got a guaranteed hull breach. Guaranteed. Which you only really get guarantee on Interceptor Strike Team at the moment. And obviously it's an Explorer, so I can't use that crew. So below deck, go back because it's going to do that. I have got what joke again, because that 500% ISO defend just worked. So as I mentioned here, the reason why you win or lose PvP is because you're doing massive crit ISO damage. So ISO defense is going to be quite important to offset that. Now there is obviously Apex Barrier, but now we've got Apex Shred, so they have other variables that you need to mix and match in, but I'm finding that there's an increasing amount of barrier and shred that they're kind of somewhat equalising each other. So ISO defense actually, from what I can on actual play testing, is really still quite effective. You might think, oh, there's loads of diminishing returns and there's loads of ISO damage, but it just seems to be really quite effective, even more effective than shred and barrier. So it's a really good officer to have in, and I find that if I don't have him in, I don't win nowhere near as much. I certainly can't hit up as much as I want to. So really important officer, pushing for DeMarco to be max, because again, when enemy at any stage, you get 65% cascade damage. So that's why we need the hull breach to proc the extra cascade damage, and cascade is better than regular ISO damage, by the way. I'm not going to the maths, it just is. So get her to max, that'll improve me. And then you got the terrible twins of Tuvok, Infiltrate Tuvok, and Icheb. Now if you don't attack first, i.e. you click attack last and you appear first in the combat log, then these don't proc. Unless I think, pretty sure it's a battleship and you've stung them, which is why cubes are really, really, in fact if you're a cube and you get stung, then these two proc twice, which is giving like 50,000 extra Apex Barrier and 280% extra cascade damage. So it's a big thing in PvP to make sure that you click last, attack first. Otherwise these two are sat there doing nothing. But when they do proc, now what's one way you can guarantee to make sure that you do click last, attack first? Well, cloak. So cloak's super strong in PvP. Not only does it synergize well with Locutus and other fleet commanders, which boosts cloak damage, and it's already inherently increases critical damage, etc. But more importantly, I find, even against good players who know how to PvP, you make sure that you're the one that gets that attacking, because another good PvP will be waiting and they'll be spamming attack just at the last second as you're about to engage. If people don't do that, I know I'm going to beat them anyway because they've probably got crap setups. Okay, so then we've got Romy maxed, adding another 15,000 Apex Barrier when you do hull breach. So that's guaranteed in the bag as long as, especially 7 procs hull breach for me. So you know that this one's banked, 15k. You know that this one's banked, 25k, if you get that attacking before the opponent. And once I've got the Mimic Gel up, I know there'll be 30k banked. So that's a lot of Apex. A lot of a lot of Apex barrier. But like I said, because Apex shreds are becoming more and more common and easy to get now, you need to make your Apex barrier really quite high. Otherwise it just doesn't have much effect. So we got to keep an eye on that in 2026, because if I get to the point where there's just like loads of tech and loads of favours and Apex shred is just kind of saturated everywhere, that it just dulls down the barriers so much, then I think the meta will change and you'll need to take Apex barrier, more Apex barrier out. But for now, I do find this quite useful. Particularly, I mean, anybody, if you do this against anybody of your same ops and similar sort of tier, G6, if you've got some of the tech and stuff that I've got, then you should not be losing, ever. And you should just be able to hit it up a lot higher with some good buffs. And then the other one I've got in there is Win Adami. Now, I think at a lower tier, like level 5, she's probably not that effective, but I managed to get to rank 3 because I won the SLB, which kind of reduces enemy play critical damage by 200%. I'm not too sure whether she is meta or not for me. But I have been stacking a lot of reduced critical damage, like loads of it on all like mirror, on favours, anywhere I can find reduce enemy player critical damage. I've been stacking as much as I possibly can, focusing on it. So some people will say it's only 200%. You can get, 1500% critical damage increase. So it's just a drop in the ocean compared to it. Maybe it is, but I think if you stack up lots of these, it can be quite a difference maker, because critical is really important. Now, there is a school of thought to say as well, I mean, the way to beat this is stop criticals from happening in the first place. So you could set up purely like the retaliate crew to just avoid critical damage. Then focus in on stopping the opponents from doing critical hits. And then once you do that, then the normal tier and power will pay dividends over X number of rounds that you do. But you can then counter that in other sorts of ways, and guess we'll have to go back and forth on this, but there is ways to then counter them crews, which so the crew that counters this has like a couple of other crews that are really bad, like against strike teams. So most people don't use them because they're kind of one-off crews for one-off situations. But if you come up against a really good PvPer and they get beat by this crew, they could go back to their station, recrew, come back, and probably kill you if they knew what they were doing. But I found that maybe 1% of people know what they're doing properly in PvP. So for this particular chip, that's the best setup. I've tested literally all the other different combinations with friends and in incursions and in arena. So what else do you need to make this work? Well, you can see I've got slipstream, warp range, not important, crit chance. I said you want to be hitting crits in round 1, so just give you that off the bat. And if you do go to round 3, 4 or round 2, 3, this means that your crits will just ignore the shields completely. So even against like the big ships with loads and billions and trillions of shields, you can just cut straight through that and get to the hull and kill what you need, and then extra shield, which is good for explorers. And I've got like a max Q cannon, which each time the opponents got the critical hit, reduce their base weapon damage for 2 rounds. Not brilliant. Against players, reduce the opponent's base critical hit damage. Again, another 300%, so add that on top of the 200% from Adami and the whatever percentages I've got on all my research and favours. I've kind of focused a bit on this build on reducing that critical hit damage and increased base weapon damage, which is nice. I mean, 100% is quite a lot. It's like sometimes if you're in incursions and you put on the incursion buff of increased weapon damage, or if you apply Lorca's Fist, you don't think, oh, that's had no effect. So it does have an effect, a reasonably decent effect, but it does get saturated because you've got, you know, maybe tens of thousands of it. Maybe not like 100,000, but you know, maybe up to like 15,000% or something. But still, if you gain an extra 10% on that, it could be quite useful. So anyways, that's what I use, because it kinda, you know, just kinda, if my only other option at the moment, if you have Q cannon, would be to go Unimatrix shielding, which again is I quite like because it reduces cascade damage like 30% 2 rounds, but you know there's a lot more cascade damage you can get now, as I've just shown. So that 60% over time has become less effective. When I run my Rotorin, cascade and ISO damage was less available, so that 60% I found was really big and kind of had a massive impact. But now it's less effective, and you can see then they're not as effective numbers as some of these numbers. So I moved to Q cannon, but I've also slowly now adding on biomimetic gel, which predominantly is for that 30k apex barrier. But again, as I mentioned earlier, you can see ISO defense is, and I just find it increasingly important. Seems to be one of the bigger impacts. So I think ISO defense and apex barrier, two pretty important PvP stats. So I could upgrade this now, but I'm waiting for an event. 23,000, 2,300, yeah. So I'm not going to be able to max it, but I'm not putting it in yet. You just kind of, I did buy this, but it's kind of an investment for when I get to G6 as well, at G6 Epic. But I'm only going to swap it in when it gets to max. What is it, tier 11? Yeah, look, 17.45 tier 11. What is it? I suppose I can get to 22, or maybe in when it's at 55 I'll put it in. Yeah, maybe when it's at 55 I'll put it in, but we'll only get to 60. So that's it on tech. So what other crews are there? Oh no, let's do bus first. So the other, like I mentioned here, you should really, I mean max 4 is just incredibly strong, but look, 12k, I've got 29 at the moment because the Alliance tournament is on. So I could only do 2 of them. So I only max 4 myself when I absolutely throw the kitchen sink. So when I say I've beaten an 140 billion Vengeance, or a 110 million Cube, or a 85 billion G6 Epic, I've max 40'd, I've Cerrito buffed, I've stung them, and I've used Junker on them. Clearly, because I'm using a G6 Rare. But the fact that you can do it, I think is quite impressive still. And it can give people a nice little shock and make them back off and not want to bring that shit back out. And you find if they're not very good at PvP and they've just kind of paper whaled themselves, spending a load of money to get it higher up and don't really know what they're doing, you kind of say, oh. I sometimes get little smiley faces or messages sent to me saying GG, etc., and then they don't come back. But some people then will go away, recrew, wear out my buffs, and then obviously I have to cede to them then. But by the time I've done that, I've got some good power destroys and had a bit of fun in doing it. So max fort's really strong, but what I just would typically do is just a regular fort. 25% critical hit damage, and then that then also triggers all the, where is it? Just going in. Oh, I'll be full now. Cerritos. Yeah, the Titan stuff. So all the Titan stuff here. Titan's Fist, base damage, shield. Base damage. Was captured, but all these, you know, increases shield. The biggest one I find is the. I mean, the biggest one is when you max fort, increase number of shots per weapons for 3 rounds. So this is why max fort's very strong, because it triggers that. So, as well as Freeman's 100%, I'm getting 55% on top of that. So, yeah. Let me just. Second, I'm just going to try and get rid of this. No, it's just replying. Some spam in the chat. People have to put up with it. So anyway, I'm not stream for ages, so I forgot all my shortcuts and what I'm doing, so it's fine. They don't come in very often. As my son likes to call them, junkers. Other than bots. So yeah, so that's why that makes that really effective. And now obviously when you do a Cerrito boost as well, what I really like is shield overcharge. No, not shield over, that increases base shield health, so that's good. Shield recycling. No, which one is it? There's one of the base damage. No. So you can see I've got all these maxed. There's one that's really quite useful. Where is it? No. That just increases the shield health. There's one I'm sure that increases. I thought it was shield recycling. Oh yeah. Increases base shield health by a percentage of officer defense each round of combat while supported by Cerritos. So I found that quite useful. It's almost like a shield regen, which does help. But anyway, once you've got your, so you need to be putting on this if you're really hitting up high, this if you're hitting up a bit, and then your Cerrito if you can. I think I've got quite a lot. How much have I got? I did that 35,000 because we've just done a Alliance tournament. So I've got plenty in the tank to use there. So they're the two offensive ones on yourself. Now you can. There's also 2 debuffs you can also put on. Swap shape, Junker, and swap shape, Mantis. And we all know what Mantis does. Cloaking. I'm not too sure, I reckon. Yeah, minus 70% critical chance, minus 70% critical damage, minus 40% shots per round, delayed weapon fire for 1 round. You can't walk. So it kind of is. It really nerfs the opposite ship, because as I've said before, you want to do critical shots, you want to do critical damage, and you want to do as many shots as you can. And you know, you don't want to be not firing for 1 round because I'm trying to kill you in the first round. So Sting, super strong in combination with them, with that setup. And the Junker, we go to the. So this is a bit of a. I'm surprised that not as many people use this in PvP. What I do when I'm in arena is I try to make sure I'm the strongest ship, and then the other 2 chips. So I'm 68, so I'll get a 64 to start and have a 61 in, and I'll make the 64 and 61 buff me and debuff the enemy, and I kill everybody, and then we just run out the armadas. But the Junker, which is over this end, if you look at some of the effects it has, in fact, because I've just opted up, I can increase some of these. But you see, look what we get here now. Apex barrier, an extra 9,000. Critical damage will be an extra 220%. Critical chance, an extra 21%. Apex shred, 105%. That's what I was saying about shred starting to increase now with some of these. Ignore that. Not bothered about the button. And then, yeah, that's fine. So that's a lot. So the kitchen sink is gate ship out, max 40, 3-2 buffet, cloak. Go in, park yourself next to, let's imagine this hostile over here is a 140 billion vengeance that's parked up, thinking they're undefeatable. So you're cloaked, you go in, you park next to it. You then send these 2 ships and you warp them right to the edge. You wait until they appear, you instantly Junker and 3-2 them, and then you instantly attack. If you want to, you also use the other Locust Fist to give you 20,000% extra damage. Now that does have a big difference. So this is where people say, oh, extra weapon damage has no effect. Well, nobody's telling me that Locust Fist has no impact on PvP. It really does. So when you get, when we're saying we get 2,000% extra weapon damage, you say, oh, it's nothing. But no one will say that 20,000% on Locust Fist have no impact. It really does. Massively noticeable impact on armadas, hitting up on hostiles, and in PvP. So obviously that's the kitchen sink as well. So you you're all pre-set up. You bring in your 2 debuff ships, instantly debuff. Locust Fist. I mean you could also use Khan's Wrath of Khan as well. So that increases base critical damage again, really high. So once you've used Locust Fist, if you want to do this again, you can use swapping Khan. In fact, I think you can work it so you can have them both on at the same time. If you really wanted to kitchen sink. Attack. And you'll be surprised at how much damage it does. It does literally like hundreds of billions of damage to the hull per shot. So you really can wipe out max G6 epics and mid-range vengeances. So the only issue is if then people go back and say, right, let's go back. Say, oh, okay, you've just beat me. He's thrown kitchen sink at me. One thing they can do is just keep coming back until you run down your buffs. But because I normally get all the buffs from Alliance tournament and these stack up, I can keep doing that for quite a while. If they keep coming back, I'm more than happy to keep killing them, as one-offs 5 or 6 times and then say I'm done. I'm not going to go back with a unbuffed and not debuffed against 140 billion vengeance. I'll just leave them to it from there. But by then I've already got myself a bit of fun and game and killed them a few times. So what obviously what we could do is like some strong counter to this, which I don't want people to start using against me, is crit chance. Don't know whether that's going to show anti-crit chance or not. Yeah, flocks. So on combat start against players and hostiles, flocks reduces critical hit chance by 100% once it's maxed. So he's kind of the offset for HGW, for Wharf. And there's also, I think, just the pure Retaliator crew. Group that. What's she do? You do. Yeah, so Cat below deck would be a good reducing enemy player crit chance once it's maxed. Sticking one there to say. I don't think there is any more groups on that. I don't think I've got them. I didn't realise she didn't have any synergy. Battleship retaliation sword. Yeah, when he's gonna be just villains. Oh, it's because I've got these on. Set that. Please synergize. Oh. Just do this. Retreat. Maybe there is no synergy for 7. No, there's not. I don't know as much because I don't play around with these. So I'll tell you what is the new crew though. These 3. So this is supposed to be the new anti, Freeman, Wharf, Walker or 7 crew. So this is the new PvP. You can see I've got her at level 5. I can upgrade her though to 10. Level 5 almost at 10. Level 5 can upgrade. So I'm almost at like tier 2 for all these. Oh yeah, look, Nog reduces critical hit chance by 20%. So once Nog's up at 70%, that's probably going to be quite good. She's already quite good at 100%, but she'll be very good at 200%. And then the issue with this crew at the moment, I mean the 200% shots, it's 100%, it's already better than Freeman. And it'll be 200% once max, so that's double the amount of shots as Freeman, so that's great. Is this 50% chance of, and it's random between hull breach, burning or assimilate. Hull breach is just better full stop because of increasing critical damage and all the other things that it synergizes with and increases. But you could get away with that if it was 100%, but it's not. So that's going to be a long slog to get the hierarchy up to anything like reasonable. Maybe when it's at 90%, it'll be akin to my current setup in terms of guaranteed procs. But at the moment it's a coin toss as to whether any of these things. I mean, you definitely get the shots, but the 2 officers are not going to proc if the opponent has any state. And then Dax if the opponent has any state. So they're just going to be sat there on 50% of your 5s doing nothing, leaving you with simply just having 200% shots. And that's just not good enough and consistent enough. And also it doesn't give you max stats anymore. And it's just not consistent enough at the moment to be viable. But once this officer gets up to 90-100%, there is a reasonable argument to say that the logic to say that that is better than the Freeman crew and even the strike teams. So I guess this is a watch out for 2026 on this crew. I've got them unlocked. The sourcing isn't great, it seems to be mostly through battle passes. I mean, there's no or SLBs or ALBs or free giveaways. There don't seem to be any like clear fast track route to be able to get these levelled. And even if I got these 2 at max, if I've got Ezri, Dax, and I got Nog at max, then it's still not very much use because this hierarchy I think is going to be the hardest one to get leveled up. So they've all kind of got to go together, and we'll see how they perform. But for right now, I don't want to toss a coin in a PvP match if I'm doing lots of battles over a period of time, because I'm going to lose 50% of the time. So I don't think it's effective. Now, when we get to... Now, I may go back once I've got my... Discord. So the G6 epic ship that I'll go to will be the Trencher, obviously, because it's the best. Now, unfortunately, annoyingly, when I was doing the poll, they seem to have got more Schmitters, so I probably will get both of these two. But I'll probably focus investment in the Trencher. Although there's an argument for me to say to just go straight for the Vengeance. But when I get to 70, I'm going to see how easy or odd I'm collecting these Vengeance ship prints. And if I find I'm kind of got a 6 month journey to get the Vengeance, I might do it, but I definitely can't go to 71 because I will need... There's no way in a million years that my Cosy is going to be G7 level 71 hostiles. You need kind of a max G6 or a very, very strong G6 epic or a Vengeance to do that. So I'm in two minds whether I skip Quencher and go to Vengeance, or go Quencher and tickle along a Vengeance, all the while going on the mega long journey all the way up to the uncommon G7. But that'd be miles off for me. So I'm not sure yet. I think I'll probably get the Quencher because I like interceptors, and if I do, there's an argument to swap back to strike team. There's an argument to swap back to strike team. Ignore the lower decks for now because they're just set up as from the days of using my Rotron. But obviously, Starkfinder has a 100% chance of hull breach, so Gulta can't definitely give you hull breach, perfect with the interceptor. Increase the number of shots by 42% once per weapon for 5 rounds. So every round you go on, you're increasing shots. You know that Garak is giving you 60% increase each round, so unlike Worf, he's not going to kind of drop off, and he can't be countered as easily by a Flux or something like that, because basically, even if the rounds go by and he's still alive, you're just constantly increasing critical chance. And Pon, which is the Explorer Strike Team equivalent, caps out after a certain number of rounds. So I found this when I had the Rotte, it's kind of, as long as you outlast Pon, you start getting 100% crit hits by about round 4, round 5. And then you're getting your cascade damage from hull breach, 9%, but he's not maxed out either, to be honest with you. So he's probably going to max out higher. He can get up higher if I wanted to. Should probably max him out in ready preparation for G6. So why is that different? Why is it maybe best to go back to the strike team when you get to G6 Epic with a Trencher? Because the firing pattern's not as good. So it doesn't do as much damage in round 1, which means that all explosion buff debuff round 1 is not really what it's designed for. I find that the IST, the Trencher, well, what was when I was using the Rotte before, similar, but the Rotte had a good firing pattern. But like I know from looking at the firing pattern of the Trencher that you do want to be going to them like rounds 3, 4, 5 because it allows Garrett to get up to max crit chance, and you can't absolutely smash hard in the first round as the Cuzzy. But I don't know yet. I'm going to test both them crews in reality, because people tell me IST is better than Freeman crew at G6 Epic, but people tell me that the Explorer Strike team should beat, was for a long time telling me that the Explorer Strike team would beat Freeman, Lorca and Retaliator 7, and it doesn't in a million years, and obviously no one says that now. So I don't believe anything until I've actually tested and tried it out myself. So that's where we are with the crews, and all the other PvP crews are a bit rubbish. One thing I'm sure there's a full synergy retaliation crew. I don't know. Let me try put this on again, because I am surprised. Apply this. Oh, okay, yeah, it's because they were blurred out. Stupid me. So that crew is pretty strong against cubes. Like, if I really wanted to kill a massive cube, that's probably better than the other crew that I've got. So you get in hull breach 9% of the time. You're getting 6% shots each round for 4 rounds, cumulative over time. You're getting increasing amounts of ISO cascade damage and increasing amounts of apex barrier. And it's obviously that on round start against player battleships, which is why it's good against cubes or other battleships, maybe the G6 battleship. So this crew, if I come up against a really big strong cube or a really big strong battleship, probably be better than the Freeman crew. No, not ships. So what's the G6 battleship crew? Which, let me go to the battleship. The Schmitter. Oh, uses the Schmitter. Nobody uses my life. Yeah, nobody uses a Schmitter cube. I don't. No, nobody uses that. But if they did, and they had a really strong version of it, I mean, I'll probably get it because I'm nearly halfway there on the prints, so I'll just finish it off. Maybe use it in Outposts or something like that. But that crew, that Retaliator crew, is really strong against battleships. But again, I would never go into an arena opening with that. Or I wouldn't have it on in incursions. Why? Because I don't know when I come up against a battleship. I could be coming up against an interceptor or an explorer. So at the very best I've got a 1 in 3 chance, but most people use interceptors. So I've probably got like a 1 in 10 chance of coming up against an opponent that setup works against. Whereas if I use the Freeman crew that I showed, it works against every ship. And again, yes, somebody could do the anti-crit crew, but how many times do you see that? You don't, because most people slop on strike teams, don't know what they're doing. You know, or they'll put on the Freeman crew but have terrible over research and artifacts and say, oh, it just doesn't work, that Freeman crew don't work, because they're not doing massive damage in round 1, so they get beat and they go back to strike team. So the vast majority of people are just running around in cookie cutter strike teams, which means that people then don't put the anti-crit crews on. So you just need to be the ones that makes the round 1 damage work. and then you win in 95% of the battles. So what else? What else PvP? So that was one of the questions they had. So the other really critical things are the artifacts in here. So a really important one, Glavin, increased base isolated damage for all your ships, 60%. That's not that hard to get because in your refinery on aggregation, no, transigen, you can use your artifact choice rare, 13 of them, to get. Now I think it might not show, maybe it will show. Is it on here? On the rares. I'll show the Glavin appear in there. Maybe it's because I've already got it maxed. I think it's because I've got it maxed. So it's not showing it. I've got any of these maxed. No, I'm not. Don't think I do max these. Yeah, it's only showing one I've not got. So I'm pretty sure you can use these rare artifact choice tokens to come in here, unlock the Glavin. Once it's unlocked, you can then go here in your artifacts to temporal restorations, and you will see, where's Glavin? There. And you should just, I mean, no, yeah, that's because it's saying I've already unlocked it. But if I go to one which I've not unlocked, 'cause I'm saving these events, you can see you can use the temporal disruptors to just get a load of them. You can instantly then max a Glavin. Sorry, croaky voice. So that's what you need to do to get Glavin, and everyone should do that. The other thing you should absolutely do is, as I mentioned before, in DTI, well, the other thing to know as well is that you can just keep trading these, getting 20 of them, and then you can use them to get them disruptors to then do what I've just showed you. So that's a good way to get a continual source of them. We're 10, 631. Which one is it? Augmented it. So you should just go and park. Right, remember this. So you can go and park a ship up on the edge of augment space. New augment. So I mean, obviously, if you've got the ship, use it. If you've got the, where is it? No, not the swap. Not the swap already. Is it out already? Oh yeah. Swap ship. So many ships now in this game. It needs a much better mechanism in this game to sort ships. It's a long thing on here. There you go. The Reliant. Yeah, Reliant. So you can just go and park your Reliant in any of these. I was like, now, the best crew for this for me would be Missile Officers. I'm not saying it's the best crew, but it just works fine. Crew would be this. Get all anti-ISO shift damage to the shields, increase crit damage, max crits, and get all your status effects going, more shield push and more ISO defense, something like that, decent for this area, and then just go and stick it on the edge of these. Once I get it, and then you just auto grind them. The reason why you auto grind them is because it then gets you the ability to be able to in augment. You'll get the stuff that allows you to spawn the champions. See, doing a bit. Spawn the champions, kill the champions. Once you kill the champions, you can then get yourself unlock Joachim, and then in the upgrade just max Joachim, and at the same time get corn skill points. So it's just a loop, and everyone now should have a Reliant that's capable of doing that. So there's no reason at all you should not have a 500% Joachim. Just stick them on the edge, and it'll just auto grind them. So that's another important thing to do for PvP. Another important thing is to do your arenas, and then, well, first of all you should get the G6 Innovation Engineering, because that's important. I've already got that, but you'll see here I've got no Premier Mirror Dust to spend to get, because I've got it all. But you want your Premium Mirror Dust, so you in Mirror, far end, you want to max all these out. Prem crit damage reduction, Prem crit chance reduction, Prem crit damage, premium whole health, always helps, shield health, need to work that one up, but again, like I said, damage not as important to me at that moment. I'm just working my way to this. I don't think I'm a million miles off it now, that 50% extra ISO damage. But these, max these ones out. Crit damage reduction, crit chance reduction, crit damage versus players, they're super important ones. And you can get that, you can get the Prem Dust from Arena. Once you've run it all out on Arena, you can now get it from, I'll just quickly show you. So if you look in here, see it gets these things, just floats off. They're what you need to spawn the champions. So you can choose any of these zones. It doesn't really matter, you can use like 44 if you wanted, or 42s, it doesn't matter. Just don't die, and just leave it. So the other way that you can get Prem Dust is in, I think it's aggregation now. Maybe it's aggregation, maybe it's transition. Maybe it's Outposts. There, yeah. So you can see I've got one of all these things set. In fact, I don't really need that Galactic Acclaim anymore, but I think it's quite cheap. So you could go two, but it gets, when you double up, it gets quite expensive. But if you're focusing purely on it, you could stop doing these things. You see I've got like one of all these things. But that's another good source now to get Prem Dust. You should 100% make sure you're pulling that, which means you've got to do your Outposts, which is, I just showed you how to do them today, so that's important. And then obviously there's the event each week which gets you a bit of Prem Dust as well. So you've got to make sure that you're doing arenas. And like I said on arenas, they are unfortunately, Scopely have given up. They've given up on how to balance arenas. Just given up. They can't do matchmaking. Full stop. So you either go in win 1 in 10, lose 9 times out of 10, and just keep going and keep going and keep going until you get the refines that you need. That's one way you can do it. Or you do, what I do is, because I'm up 68, I'll wait. Well, I have a preset with an alliance group, the 64 and the 60, or I go into public and just wait for 64s to start groups, then join them. But then I only click ready if they add in a 60 or 61. Eventually they get the idea. And you find a team that's got me at 68, a starter at 64, and someone at 60. And then I send them PMs and say, can you please buff me at the start, and then take your GS31 and your Mantis. So one takes GS31, one takes Mantis. Sting, the strongest player that you're coming up against. Sting and Junker hit the hardest player. I kill them, and then once we're on top, we just run out the armada and win. If you do that, you've made the form of the work for you. You win 9 times out of 10. You'll still come up against them. I don't know what happens. I still get random massive ships, vengeances in 160 to 170 billion, or there is still people out there that must have spent so much money and just got maxed everything at PvP. I've come up against 1 or 2 people like that, but you'll win 9 times out of 10. But it takes about half an hour to get the group set up, because not everyone knows what they're doing and they don't understand. And so but if you end up with like a 66, 67, 68 or 68, 68, 68 group, you're just going to get murdered. You'll just get slaughtered, because your average ops will be high enough to put you in with 71, 70, 70 or 70, 70, 69 or something like that. So I do okay these days, but again, because I can kill up it really strong, I will sometimes win some of them matches. But as I've said, it's not cost effective for me or the team to be max 40 in every single time. You've kind of got to pick and choose when you absolutely want to do that. So that's how you win or lose at arenas. It's not great, and I think they've just totally given up on how to handle matchmaking. But at least these days you can get extra loot from going in and doing it. So that's them. Let's have a look at some of the others in here that you want. I mean, that gives you extra ISO defense for all ships in PvP. That should just get maxed from Gorn Refinery, I think. But again, once you get it to level 15, then you can just power it up in terms of the remnant levels. So that's easy enough to do. So I mean, like the load in here, the Glavin was the one that jumps out as the one you really want to do. I also focused a bit on stuff like increase hull health, because 3000% is a reasonable amount. So again, that bucket cost, you can use your refineries to get that to level 8, to open it up, and then you can use your temporal disruptors to get it to level 8, and then you can turn your temporal disruptors into the stuff you need, these temporal remnants. You can get it all the way to level 12. So once you've opened these, pick the ones that you want that have got remnant levels, and then you can just immediately max them that are important to you. Yeah, so you need to have a look through these. I think I've said some of the main ones. Now obviously these are important. Apex barrier, fighting player targets, so the 4 mastery ones, and Benga's Storybook, Sexton, Vulcan Scroll, and Richard. These are also important because they get you a daily income of resources that are most important to speed ups. You see, I've got this Benga's Storybook, which gives isolated defense, which is probably the worst of these things in terms of percentages. Look, 2000% damage, isolated damage, and apex barrier. But this also opens up, gives you, I think, like a day and a half worth of speed ups, Sigma speed ups every day. So make sure you get that. And then thinking, how do I get them? Again, they're on your refinery. I think the Transigen environment. Yeah, on Transigen under Artifacts Epic, I think. Epics maybe on rares. Yeah, under Artifact rares. So I just do one of each time. Again, you could focus and do 2 each of them, but you then need to, you won't have as much refined rare, Transigen, etc. And I just find it sustainable to do that. It's ticked along fine, but these are really important. Make sure that you're doing enough. And what I do, I just stock up massively in one go, and I need to do this now. So you can see here, I've got, obviously I need to go out and do stock up on this rare Transigen, so I'm running low. I did stocked up a bit on Epic last night. I need to go stock up on these, although I've got loads right now, so probably not that important. And these are the hardest ones to get, these Transigen containments, because you got to go into a really high hazard zone to do them. So I'm not doing great on these. I need to go out and stock up on all this. But what if stocked up on them, you can see I just do like 1, 1, 1, 1. And that gives me enough to pull singles of the things that I need on all these. I don't do much on the efficiencies and then I am saving up to get the Koskari jump. Or maybe I'll wait and get the Crencher jump if that appears in here. I don't know if it will, I'm guessing it will. So they're important. Other important things for PvP. Your buildings, I mean, people underestimate the impact. You got isolatical damage bonus, not massive. Your shield and health. You've got this building, critical hit damage against player bonus, critical hit damage against no hostiles. So you get more crit hit damage and crit hit damage reduction again. So this is another example when I talked about the below decks officer who gives 200% crit hit damage reduction. I showed something earlier that gave another 300%, another one here that gives 200%, so you're kind of stacking all these things up. And there's loads across these buildings now. I have traditionally bought a day 1 pack for the buildings, but I didn't for this, because I didn't see the immediate benefit from it. But it has got up to 41 quite quick. And a little tip for getting this to 41 is make sure that you go to refinery and go Outposts and go to, you can get lost with this. So many things. You like see these like, oh, you think, oh, these are just trades for these things, but this end one is not a component trade, it's a command core trade. So you can turn your rare ones into your common ones, and then I've already done that, so I've not got much to trade down. But like, if you've been doing your battle passes, you've probably picked up quite a lot of these rare ones. Or if you've been doing reasonably high outposts, you trade them down, and then you can use that trade down to go directly into the common here. And I'm not doing it until there's an event on. If there's no event appears, then the Crucible will score points from this, so I'll save it for that. What else is good for PvP? I talked about the terrible twins. If I go to the faction and I go to DTI, DTI. I think you can get them in that. No, not DTI. Which one is it? Open maybe. No, I don't work that either. Section 31. Yeah, there. Look. You can see I get 5 a day from Specialist 7, and you can get 5 a day of each and 2 raw. So should be doing that every day. And when you get a chance to use dump your event store loot on, so don't look, I got the Ezra. Here look, retaliation crew. To the moment I'm saving it up, and when the event comes on for Crucible I'll just dump it all into Specialist 7 because I want to get it maxed, so I've got 100% chance. But before I did that I would doing 2 rock. I did Romy because it would guarantee 15,000, and then I did Icheb 2 rock. So you can pick them up in this store and get them maxed. So that's a really good place to do them, and you should just be picking up loads of these off the depot tokens from doing SMSs and finishing top 10s in SLBs and stuff like that. So they'll just rack up each month and dump them all at once. And that is a good point about saving up. If we go into this, if you look at the calendar, you'll see that there is Chronicles of the Ascendant. I'll be calling it Crucible, but it's a Chronicle of Ascendance events. So this appears once a month, and the very last SLB in it, which is normally, I think it was like the 20th it started, but there'll be one a month. It scores double points in the SLB, the major SLB, and it's got a heroic SMS. So all I do is every month save up all my resources and dump it on one day. And this Chronicle is quite good because you get like events for upgraded buildings, for upgraded specialty ships, for spending your cosmic thing. So if you do that and finish like, you know, top 20 or top 25, but don't, what I would say is that don't bother spending resources on them SLBs on the run up to the last one. Save them all for the final. That's what I do. And then it tends to get me new officers to either tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3 if you win it. And that'll constantly unlock them every month. But I know that some people prefer these cosmic choice recruits, so some people dump it all in and try and win as many of these as possible because they prefer the choice to do them. I don't. I skip them and go straight to the Chronicle of the Ascendant events. There's no information about that in here. There was before. That's another good tip for unlocking officers every month. I guess there is like good stuff hidden amongst favours as well, but at least for arena, to be good at arena, you should be maxing out like reinforced arena hull, reinforced arena shield, so that gives you 2,500% extra. Should really get them maxed out. Should really start working on that vengeful defence. An extra 1,500, but it's not much, is it really? It's better than not having it, but it's still not very much. But I guess I've got no one else to spend it on now. The other thing, not that good. In here. Yeah. I think that's about it. We talked about most things for PvP. Talked about, yeah, talked about these, the artifacts, talked about the techs. These. We've talked about crews. Oh, that's because he's off on running. I don't think there's anything more really to pick up, and they're just a matter of each month just slowly improving. Now what I have done, because I don't spend a lot, I don't spend much at all really, maybe 1 pack a month, which I guess is a lot for a computer game, but compared to some people spending thousands of pounds a month, I just focus on one chip at each tier, whereas some people will, I just see them running around with like 2 tier 12 G6 rares. It's like, I don't know how they must have been dumping resources that they've got through buying, because I focus it all on one single ship and I can get it up to this sort of level, with making sure that all my PvP and research is at the top level that I can do. Whereas maybe some people are not as concerned about PvP, so focus all the resources into other things. But to be cost effective, £100 a month plus battle passes, that sounds relatively competitive. Right, that were probably the stream done, as they were the 2 things I've covered. I know that people were intrigued as to how I managed to do Outposts, and people were intrigued as to my PvP setups and the thoughts for the future on it, and where to get things like ISO damage and ISO defense. A few hints and tips in there really. Some stills on the screens that I've done maybe helps. I won't really planning on updating my PPT that I did, maybe that infographics I did. I know loads of people asked me to do that, but it's quite a lot of work. But I might do at some point into the new year. Try and have like a 1-page summary of all these things to help people. But hopefully that's been a useful stream, and I'll put that up on YouTube. And do feel free to follow me on Twitch and subscribe to me on YouTube, but I'm not that bothered, you don't have to if you don't want to. I just did this because I thought it was quite worthy of an update, because I've not done one for a while. But cheers on. See you later.